Hello everyone, Mike Levin, September 20th, 2017. I guess Wednesday, around 9 a.m. Walking into work, coming out at Penn Station here on probably what is one of the final videos that I'll be doing on this particular walk, as I will be switching to the Staten Island Ferry. I do believe I have to follow up on a few details to make sure that the place I'm trying to secure, that I have indeed secured in a building complex called URBE, which stands for Urban Living Environment, which is along the lines of these Brooklyn-esque restored warehouses, but is a brand new building on the coast of Staten Island. I guess facing out into the harbor, you can see New York City, Manhattan across the way, and it's a really beautiful view, and it's got all the amenities of a hotel, but it's apartment living, so it'll be a real change in lifestyle, and it will be a real change in my commute walk. So I figured I'd take the very touristy walk today here, walking past, I guess I'm on 34th Street, so almost all my walks are on 33rd or 34th, which is just above or below, or below or above respectively, the Empire State Building. And it's kind of rare when I go the other routes, when I'm trying to, I guess, avoid the tourists, but as someone who grew up in Philadelphia and I guess always had a tinge of New York envy, the novelty of walking through the herds of people, different people every day, each one having their own story, not that you ever get that story, but people watching, tourist watching. I heard about it from my dad all my life growing up, because the daily commute to New York City from Philadelphia was his thing, and we used to talk about 2 hours each way. I'm living in Manhattan, working in Manhattan, and it's already an hour and 20 minutes each way using the public transportation system, the metro, because I either have to do a connection or do this particular sort of crosstown walk because of just, the chances of the endpoints. Some commutes in the city are really easy, some not so much. And it may end up at the end that I'm only cutting an hour 20-minute one way into an hour 10-minute. I've been looking at my different ways of getting back and forth from where I think I'm going to be living, still up there, not a quick commute. I guess using the express bus, the Staten Island Express bus, could potentially be a bit quicker, but I like the current plan, and I'm going to try and stick with it. So I'll be taking the ferry back and forth, and so at least one of the legs of my commute, because there will be the walk or the train to the ferry, and then the likely train ride at the other side of the ferry, which will take me essentially right to my building. So this walk goes away, but the ferry is there, which is about a half hour. So maybe I'll shoot videos from the ferry. You should see sunset from the ferry with the Statue of Liberty there. It's just gorgeous. It's one of those views that everyone should try and go out of their way to get if they're taking a trip here to New York City. If you get over to Staten Island, I don't know, check out their zoo. They have the biggest collection of venomous snakes in the world, and it's where I had gotten married. So yeah, change to the texture of the videos coming up, but it's always change. It's always about transition, and that will make a good transition to what's up with Python and work. Well, it's actually kind of awesome. There's the frustrating sides of it, where I actually tried to plunge into something called System D, which is the way things are generally auto-started on a Linux system these days. And also the way things are generally scheduled. It's an alternative to cron now for more reliable scheduled jobs. And it's got a whole API for doing all the fancy stuff that needs doing. And I tried using it that way to do its own self-respawning, to clean up any memory leaks that might be occurring. And things were running invisibly directly from systemd, so I was relying on file writing, logging, in order to see what was going wrong. And there's nothing that's a bigger pain than to open this file and that, tailing this file, and that. To do a tail is to show the last, screen full of line entries, usually 25 lines of a file, that keeps updating as you look at it. So if the log file is getting updated, so does your view of it. ls, or actually less, the less command is a good way of doing it too if tail is not on your computer. But anyway you slice it, and here I am just trying to get through one of these impassable crowds. It's a pain, and it's a lot less intuitive than just looking at what's called the console output. The console output is all your print statements and also any of your logging statements, which also output to standard out, that goes into your text terminal that you're using when you're interacting with a computer. You're not using a point and click desktop at this point. You've logged in through an SSH program, you're typing around, and those terminal windows you type into are also where you generally run C Python scripts from. You would type Python space filename.py, and it just runs from there. And if you have any print statements or output or logging, it shows to that console window. And that's where all the informative bits are about where the script is up to, what was the most recent things it did. And it's all consolidated into one place, standard out. It's not in potentially multiple log file locations. You don't have to do any loading of anything. You just look in the one place there is to look. So I wanted that, but there's the problem of long-running scripts running from terminals. When the terminal ends, so does the script. So that counts out the way I was doing most of my script development and debugging, which was to open a terminal window on my local machine, Mac PC, it didn't matter, log in and get to my virtual environment, which is part of my login, to make sure I'm using the right versions of Python and even CD'd into the right directories. I would just type Python space file name, bam, the script starts running. I can walk away from my machine, but if the machine reboots overnight or goes to sleep, the script stops running, even though the code's really running on the remote machine. Because the connection to the terminal has shut down, so does the script. And that's like an 80s level problem. This has been solved for a long time in a variety of ways. One of them is running things invisibly in the background and just not need the console, and that's running in what Windows people know as Windows services, but the Linux world generally calls daemons. And those, since they don't have console output, need to read and write log files, or mostly write log files, for you to know what's going on with them. But if you want a console that you can look at, and you also want that long-running stability, you can use screen terminal programs, including GNU Screen, which is a common one that's been around for a long time and is included with most Linux distros these days. Or you can use Tmux, which is the one that most people will actually guide you to these days because it feels a little bit modern and does certain things that are hard in Screen better. But the thing is, the things that Screen does well are the essentials, and they're easy, and they have a easy to use API, and their primary key binding to issue a Screen command is Control A on your keyboard. So you would do Control A D to say detach from a console window you had started, instead of Control B, which is what Tmux uses, but I use Control B all the time in Vim, my text editor. So I have a primary key binding collision between two of my primary tools. No good. You layer on that a few other issues I had with Tmux while I was trying to use it, and how positive my initial experience was with Screen LS, Screen hyphen capital S name, Screen hyphen R for reattach, name to reattach it. And it's just a lot like using other Linux tools. It feels very natural, very common, and I took to Screen right away in a way that I did not to Tmux. So now Screen is part of my primary tools. So what did I do? First thing I did was I used System D to auto start a Screen command that runs and then detaches from a console that runs a Python script that uses the Python schedule module. So it's running in a console window under Screen and detaches itself. So when I want to check in on it, all I do is I log into that machine from any terminal, including my iPhone, which I have it working with, my Note 8, my Kindle, I tested this with, Kindle Fire HD 8, and also, of course, any Mac or Windows desktop PC, which I've tried it with as well. All you need to do is have the official VPN client and login credentials, and you're golden. I can connect to the machine running my automated scripts and just see the command line output of what it's up to currently. And since it's a bunch of scheduled stuff, the output from all these different scheduled things weave together. And so what I'm looking at in that command line window could be any of a variety of things, namely the most recent thing that had produced output, but I don't think I can actually scroll up into a command line history, or else you'd have a memory leak problem. Screen probably understands what it's doing and what it's called upon to manage from a memory standpoint, and purges the history of the command line as it scrolls off screen, which is something that a more common, pure bash terminal window does not do. But because these screen sessions are started from under the program called Screen, it gets to decide those decisions. It gets to make those decisions, and probably does a number of things to make sure that all the various memory leak scenarios you could design under never-ending command line output on detached, invisible until you reattach to them screens could be cut off by short memories. So log files will still be playing in, but I'll have this first pass check about where's it up to, what was the last number of things it output, a screen's worth. So I might actually start thinking about, efficiency in knocking screens down to scrolling, producing a lot of output that might needlessly scroll, which I do to an extreme because I'm using something called Figlet or PyFiglet, the Python version, which creates big ASCII text banners of the sections of the code that I'm up to, because I like to see big banners scroll by almost like headlines to group and organize my output from my long-running programs. So there's some trade-off to be done here between seeing strong visual tokens or nicknames for the program sections scroll by so I immediately and intuitively know where it is, and the details of what happened in the steps probably prior to that, because the big banners are going to have the effect of scrolling older messages off the screen. So first pass gives me where it's up to in the genuine command line output, which I'll always be able to get to no matter what device I'm on. So whether the scripts are running or not, no longer a mystery. Where it's up to, no longer a mystery. What it choked out on, because the error message is going to be sitting there, not a mystery. Mysteries purged on long-running scheduled Python scripts. Check. That was what was most broken. When I went through my morning metaphors, what's most broken, where do you get the biggest bang for the buck, and what plates need to be spun. Well, all this scheduling stuff having mysterious aspects to it at all is what's most broken. It's also where I got the biggest bang for the buck, because suddenly my morning changes because I don't have the process of checking this script and that script. My confidence in everything having run goes up. I start to implement my best practices that I discovered per process or per script in each other process or script, which are all being called upon from the master scheduling script, you know, the one that imports the schedule module, the Python schedule third-party module. It's not sched, C-H-E-D, it's actually schedule. And it has all the kind of control over, you know, exact and period scheduling that I wanted, and a sufficiently readable Pythonic API, and dealt with the concurrency issues, and gave me a mechanism for file locking or process locking, however you want to think about it, all sufficiently so that I know I'm on the right path. I have that critical key moment where, you know, with the Wright brothers, when they were trying to see if an airplane could, whether a combustion motor could power an airplane, it was a matter of ratios that you would get in a wind tunnel. And once you achieved that ratio, once you had that successful test, success assured. That's a recurring thing in life. If you know you're trying to do something and you're not actually jumping off the cliff and trying to fly with each attempt, but you have some simulated process like a wind tunnel, you know what you're looking for is in terms of output from the system based on the input you put in. You control the input, you get output reliably, same input, same output. Start testing input. When you get the output you want, you could have that success assured moment, and that is kind of what I seek every day at my job, because different projects, different challenges, different frontiers of what I'm trying to do professionally, actually very interesting. I'm not being as conservative as I used to be in the past, knowing the carpet gets ripped out from under you recurringly through your career for various reasons. Oh wow, I'm going past a motorcade. Someone's in town, as they always are, but this is an interesting one. Anyway, I'm walking down Madison Avenue on the final block and a half approach to work, so I better wrap it up here. How do I sum all that stuff up? That was all over the place. Is it a 3 morning metaphor video? Yeah, it might be. The 3 morning metaphors backed up by the 80-20 rule, recursive passes with the rabbit hole, don't chase the rabbit down the rabbit hole escape clause to ensure 80-20 rule compliance. What's most broken? Where do you get the biggest bang for the buck? What plates need to be spun? Didn't talk about that third one very much. But once you map it out and you know what to tackle first in terms of big projects, you actually find a few little things you can put before it that come from the plates need to be spun category. Tap out a few of those spinning plate to-dos, and then move on to your first big thing while their spinning plates are in process. And now you personally are working in a more concurrent mode than you would have otherwise. If you tackle the big thing first and neglected spinning those plates will fall in the future and things all fall apart. It's like that Tom and Jerry cartoon, catching the plates as they're falling. I know I'm mixing plate metaphors, but so what? And what I think, and I have to apply more broadly in my life, is that I got down just sort of a algorithm for productivity, perhaps. You do that analysis of those 3 metaphors, and then you arrange your work accordingly, and then when you tackle the work, loud truck, across this way first. When you tackle the work, you arrange it so that when you're only 1/5 done, you could have stopped and still have won. That's the 80-20 rule. Make sure that the small projects don't become big ones by taking notice of whether you're chasing that rabbit down the rabbit hole of Wonderland, which will gobble up that whole day and make you wonder whatever happened. So when you see yourself chasing the rabbit, stop. If you have to crank out some 80-20 rule successes with 80% of the advantage front-loaded into the first 20% of the work you're putting into it, take notice, take yourself out of the zone. You want to get into the zone to get work done, but not the plate spinning work. If you get in the zone, you fall down the rabbit hole. Stay out of the zone, stay in the moment, be in PR or agency mode that I've learned so well over the past 10 years. It just drives me nuts. Spin a few plates, go into the zone, tackle big things, have an idea of when you're going to come back and check the spinning plates. Cut off all distractions and notifications and the big chunks you carve out for yourself, where you have to do types of work that just other people can't do. That is where your competitive advantage comes from. Your ability to deal with the boring and to power through it, and to have boring become powerful. That is what taking up Python is really all about. That's what increasing your personal capabilities on the technical level is really all about. That's what doing this without having to transform yourself into the engineering mindset of computer science people and have to become a career professional in order to just do simple things. Avoiding that pitfall, that's what it's all about. And off I go to do all this stuff. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon on some very different commute routes, and don't forget to subscribe.